Hi, I'm Mimmi Nordgren Hansson.
And I am Niklas Lenström.
And welcome to our presentation named Can Moral Psychology Inform Moral Education? Some Critical Perspectives.
Introduction. Practitioners and researchers agree that teaching is a moral practice, but often disagree on how to treat ideals, norms, and values in their pedagogical practices. One example is the division between character-based and reason-based approaches to moral education. Some researchers have argued that teachers should lead by example and thereby help their pupils to form good habits and develop desirable character traits, such as integrity and tolerance. This is often combined with an emphasis on the ability to respond emotionally to others as a part of a social group, which is characteristic of a character-based approach to moral education. Other researchers have argued that teachers should challenge their pupils with moral dilemmas and thereby contribute to their ability to reason and develop cognitively. This is often combined with an emphasis on the ability to think rationally as individuals, which is characteristic of a reason-based approach to moral education. According to the recent development within moral psychology, we often make judgment based on emotionally driven intuitions and afterwards make up reasons to explain them. As the philosopher Joshua Green puts it, we decide what is right or wrong on the basis of emotionally driven intuitions, and then, if necessary, we make up reasons to explain and justify our judgments. This can be considered a challenge for moral pedagogy. Initially, we will present the theory and argue why it seems to provide an important contribution to our understanding of the normative dimension of education. Finally, we will use a philosophical method in order to critically examine some of the core features of the model and discuss which consequences it has to, for instance, aspects of care, which is inherent in an educational context. The new development within moral psychology is perhaps best illustrated by the work of American social psychologist Jonathan Haidt. Haidt let his respondents review a number of stories which did not involve any harmful intentions or consequences, but violated certain cultural taboos. For instance, dog. A family's dog was killed by a car in front of their house. They had heard that dog meat was delicious, so they cut up the dog's body and cooked it and ate it for dinner. Haidt used the results from his interviews in order to map how people in general make ethical judgment. The result was a theory called the social intuitionist model, or SIM. A conclusion of the studies is that the majority of our moral judgments are made automatically based on how we react emotionally in different situations. In retrospect or post hoc, we try to find rational justifications for the judgments. For instance, with reference to that somebody could come to harm. The reasons are often given without regard to anything that speaks against the immediate reaction and are intended to justify our judgments to others in a social context. Because of our sensitivity to group norms, the judgments tend to affect people in our social setting, regardless of the strength of the arguments put forward. The moral consciousness is compared to a tongue with different types of taste buds, which together can cause a variety of sensations. Haidt has described these receptors as pairs. For example, care, harm, justice, cheating, loyalty, betrayal, authority, subversion, wholeness, degradation, liberty, and oppression. Which of these the individual develops a taste for depend to a large extent on the social and cultural context. The background to these disagreement between proponents of character-based and reason-based approaches to moral education is, from this perspective, that they emphasize different parts of our ethical thinking. The character-based model stressed the ability to feel empathy, solidarity, and group affiliation, while the reason-based model stressed the ability to think rationally, consider consequences, and universalize judgments. Haidt and his collaborators have suggested that the debate between different moral pedagogical perspectives should be integrated as a part of how norms, ideals, and values are dealt with in education. In this way, Haidt's solution to the conflict between character-based and reason-based perspectives on moral education is to raise the level of abstraction.
We will now critically examine Haidt and his collaborators' proposal to moral education. As we have seen, Haidt is arguing that emotion have crucial significance for moral judgments and criticized traditional moral psychologists for overemphasizing reason. Haidt and his collaborators propose that their psychological findings have broad implications on the subject of moral education. They attempt to solve the ideological dispute between character-based and reasoning-based approaches by raising the level of abstraction. The proposal amounts to a meta-perspective on moral education in which teachers should make use of the ideological division, engaging children in debating which virtues to promote and confront moral disagreements. Haidt's contribution within moral psychology, we argue, is somewhat contradictory to the proposed raise of abstraction within moral education. Considering that the psychological findings stresses the importance of emotion and social context, it is unfortunate to disregard this in relation to moral education. For this reason, a relational approach to moral education, we believe, is a promising perspective in order to utilize Haidt's psychological findings within the educational field. The relational approach, often referred to as ethics of care, puts great emphasis on emotion as fundamental to moral development. This prominence to emotions, along with the understanding of care as an inherent foundation, makes the approach compatible with Haidt's social intuitionist perspective. However, care is not to be considered a trait in line with the tradition of character education. It is rather, from both a descriptive and normative perspective, a recognition of situated social relations as basis to human morale. According to care ethicist Nell Noddings, care is regarded as either natural or ethical. The first is an innate disposition and revolves from an unforced will to care. The latter is instead based upon ethical considerations, preceded from previous experience. The aspect of care, we argue, is inherent in an educational context, since school is to be considered a living social community. Due to the understanding of care as situated and contextual, a higher level of abstraction and rational treatment of moral question would be a counterproductive method to achieve moral development. By implementing such a practice, the importance of emotional response in social relations, which is to be considered an essential part of education, may be seriously underestimated. Although we are critical to the methodological proposal of raising the level of abstraction, the findings within moral psychology conducted by Haidt have great potential to inform moral education. Within moral psychology, Haidt's theories disputes traditional understanding of moral judgment and unilateral focus on rationalism and moral reasoning. Hence, this displacement ought to be conceivable within moral education, recognizing the importance of emotion, relation, and context in educational practice. Investigation of the psychological predispositions in caring relations could further result in a moral education with a collective and structural focus. This would be fruitful since it enables for interventions on various levels, between individuals, within and between groups, and perhaps most important, on the level of school organization. To illustrate how moral education could be informed by moral psychology through a relational approach, we created this model. This is one example of how teachers can promote caring informed by the social intuitionist model within an educational context. Natural care is enhanced by green links and ethical care by yellow links. Following the model from the upper left corner, the teacher helps the pupil to identify eliciting situations. Furthermore, they recognize the pupil's intuition as foundation for later action. This relates to the acknowledgement of pupil A's judgment as an effect of previous intuition. Creating awareness of emotional effect on moral reasoning also enhances link 5 and 6, which strengthens the pupil's ability for natural and ethical care. Ethical care is further emphasized through the link 3 and 4, which stresses the teacher to encounter pupil A's moral expression as a part of a caring relation with the teacher, as well as the recognition of emotional intuition within the teacher as well. Natural care is by the teacher also enhanced through the teacher's judgment and reasoning. Altogether, the interventions aims at creating caring relations and networks. This could be illustrated as follows. Figure 3 shows a caring context created by the promotion of natural and ethical care informed by the social intuitionist model. Yellow links represent natural care through interventions directed towards intuition. Green links represent ethical caring, increased by the interventions directed at reasoning and judgment. Some concluding remarks. In relation to moral education, there's reason to remain somewhat skeptical to HAIDT'S and his collaborators' proposal. A meta-perspective on moral education, we argue, is contradictory to HAIDT'S influential findings within moral psychology. Since HAIDT'S emphasized the importance of situated relations and emotional effect on moral judgment, it would be beneficial to incorporate this as a vivid part of moral education. We believe this could be achieved through the relational approach of care ethics. Thank you for listening, and please, if you have questions or comments, contact us on following emails.